back to Growing Tech Fast. Today I am joined by Jon, who is here to tell us a little bit more about his story with Monerium. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jon. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem at all. It's a pleasure. I guess we'll get straight into a little bit about you guys there. And so for the benefit of all of our listeners, can you tell me a little bit more about Monerium and what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, so Monerium issues on-chain fiat money, which is fully authorized and regulated. It's kind of a subset of stablecoins. And our on-chain fiat money allows for seamless transition between traditional bank accounts and the Web3 ecosystem. So what we do is that we provide our customers with IBANs, which is the European bank account, to connect with their Web3 wallets and to any bank account, and then mint all incoming fiat payments to their wallet or smart contract. And conversely, the user can redeem on-chain fiat back into the off-chain bank account. So we are starting with Euro and the Euro token, which follows the DeFi standards such as ERC20. And the Euro is available on Ethereum, Polygon, and the Gnosis chains. And Monerium actually, in 2019, Monerium became the first company to be authorized, licensed and authorized to issue on-chain fiat in the form of e-money in the EU on blockchains. And we are supervised by the Financial Supervisory Authority of the Central Bank of Iceland and offer our services to individuals and companies in the European Economic Area, that is the EU, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, but also the UK and Switzerland. And then we're compatible with the market in crypto assets regulations, also known as MiCA. So our on-chain fiat money is just by law, it's over-collateralized, it's safeguarded in segregated accounts, and it's a priority claim in case of insolvency.
Nice. And I guess, where did it all start for you, and where did the idea come from?
Yeah, exactly. So Monerium was actually founded in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis in Iceland. So after the crash, I was elected by the parliament to join the supervisory board of the central bank. And this involvement immersed me in the intricate process of cleaning up. I was kind of in the cleaning department after the collapse. And actually, the banking collapse had an enormous negative impact on the economy, and it lasted for years. You know, we're talking about trade, investments, growth, employment. It was all affected. Everyone was affected. Mm-hmm. And Monerium emerged from these circumstances and fueled actually by just one question, and a very simple one. It's basically the question, why always reacting to bank failures? Mm-hmm. Since we now have the technology and the means to preventing this to happen in the first place. Because Web3 offers solutions to challenges that we have had with fractional reserve banking, and that is through decentralized finance applications. Mm-hmm. And with this new technology, you can almost or mostly remove the counterparty risk, the settlement risk, and the access to denial risk, shall we say. So you can remove most of the problems that you have associated with fractional reserve banking. And we believe that these technologies promote financial transparency, it reduces the reliance on intermediaries, and it empowers individuals and companies to have greater control over their financial activities. You see, banks are, as we know, private entities in most cases. And if you live in a capitalistic society, then it is a natural thing to go bankrupt. I mean, it can happen to every company. However, it's problematic if it happens to banks. So That's why we have these regulation, we have bank oversight, we have central banks that are supporting the banks. It's all about preventing bank failures. Yet, bank failures and bank runs, they do happen. And banks basically operate as highly leveraged entities. And in some sense, you can say they operate like hedge funds.
Yeah.
Meaning that, yeah, exactly. So meaning that a minor negative shift in their asset is basically risking the entire equity base. And what compounds this risk is the intertwining of banking operations with our deposits and our ability to make payments. This creates in our mind unnecessary risk, and our goal at Monerium is to create a choice where payments, deposits, and banking are unbundled. And this is then an alternative where payments and storing of our digital money does not depend on the solvency of banks. It's quite interesting to think about it, that in the past, the only choice for storing digital money and conducting payments has been through bank deposits and bank payment transfers. But we're altering this by creating this choice of unbundling these services. So in that sense, banks become less systematically important.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is what we're trying to do. This ensures that nobody is forced to rely on banks for storing their digital money or making digital payments. Customers, they have a choice. And we believe actually that this is really important to try to facilitate sounder financial system, more stable financial system.
Definitely. I think there's always so much in the news constantly about crypto, about payments, about banking. So it can sometimes be quite hard to stay up to date on the constant changes and the regularity landscape as well. But I know we talked on our last call about some of the really exciting things happening in crypto right now, and how we talked about PayPal becoming the first major US fintech company to offer its own crypto wallet. So how do you think that will impact the crypto market?
Yeah, I think, the fact that PayPal is entering this market is really remarkable. It's significant, and in particular for the US, of course. Mm-hmm. And the reason, in my mind, the main reason is that there's a lack of clear rules and regulations for stablecoins in the US, which is unlike what is the case for Europe. But this lack of defined, guidelines places the holders of US stablecoins in an uncertain legal position, basically a legal no man's land. So I think basically PayPal's initiative to issue stablecoins is a milestone in what we see as a growing acceptance of stablecoins in the mainstream financial circles, because PayPal lends credibility to the stablecoin industry. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I suppose it gives people some reassurance that that it is kind of legit. So that makes sense. And we mentioned the current regularity landscape, especially in the UK and in Europe, it's slightly different. So how would you say that's evolved over the past few years in particular?
Well, as we know, then recently the European Parliament made a significant move to introducing a very comprehensive set of rules and regulations for crypto assets. Mm. And this framework, which is known as markets in crypto assets or MiCA, mm-hmm. It covers a wide range of aspects, including the issuance and provision of services related to cryptocurrencies, stablecoins, and similar digital assets. So I think MiCA for the EU stands out as a groundbreaking development, and it's poised to make a substantial impact on the entire crypto landscape within Europe, at least. And both UK and the EU have been actively engaged in crafting regulatory frameworks for crypto assets. We know that. And a case in point is the EU anti-money laundering directive, which basically extends regulatory coverage to crypto assets. And this directive requires providers of crypto services to register and adhere to anti-money laundering and know your customer requirements. There's a lot of development in both the UK and the EU.
And do you think that the steps we've been making over the last few years have been positive? Do you still think we've got quite some time to go before we're where we need to be at?
Yeah, I think it's definitely has been positive. We're not at the end point, and probably never will be.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's interesting because the regulatory landscape is developing in different jurisdictions. And if we, for example, compare the UK and the EU, then we see that in both jurisdictions, the legislative body is working on similar goals of regulating crypto, but there are some differences in their approaches because they want to attract, these companies to their countries. For example, both regions, they emphasize AML, KYC, KYB, KYT, and consumer protection.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly, then the UK, following Brexit, has the flexibility to set own regulations. And the good news is, just as technical and business innovation, this is a matter of competition between nations. So the most sound regulation, as I said earlier, will attract companies and therefore build and strengthen DeFi within the respective borders. So what we see is that the regulatory developments are ongoing. We will have to see what happens. But in my mind, then one of the most interesting area is how central banks will support stablecoin issuance. And we saw, for example, this summer that the EU Commission issued a review of the PSD2 regulation. PSD2 is the Payment Service Directive. And they suggested a revised rule, which is called then PSD3. And one of the suggestions is to allow Euro central banks to provide account services to non-bank payment service providers at the discretion of the central bank in question. And in my mind, it might be a response to a consultation paper that was put forward by the Bank of England earlier this year with somewhat not same but similar ideas. So I think it's interesting to see how different jurisdictions are, in a way competing.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, it's just all so interchanging and constantly this world is being updated. Back onto your life at Monerium and I guess the startup life, how it is anyway. And on top of that, being in the crypto space and the Web3 space, how have you dealt with the constant changes and trials and tribulations with the whole world?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. We know that the entrepreneurial path is never a smooth ride. Sometimes it's said it's like a roller coaster ride. It's testing you, every step of the way. But for a project like Monerium, it has been unlike any of my previous startups. And I say this because this is kind of a grand project, and definitely it is global in nature. And when we started, then no one had ever attempted what we aimed for. No one had attempted to issue fully licensed and regulated fiat money on chain. And then, compounding the initial challenge was that we were entering into a heavily regulated sector, banking and issuance of fiat money. Come on. So it's an industry that is traditionally resistant to change with high barriers to enter. And we based our approach on the crypto technology. it's a space where that has had the reputation of illicit money laundering activities, and we need the support and approval of conservative financial regulators.
Yeah.
So it was not easy. And to make matters even more challenging, then central banks, the entities with the power to create money at will, they have recurrently over the years hinted at entering the same market as we. So, their claims have often raised skepticism among investors, making our task of securing funding much more demanding. I mean, who's going to compete with the central banks? That would be no small feat. So, but our vision has always been clear. We have never pivoted. We wanted to reshape this global finance and banking, by, like I said, by unbundling payment and store of digital funds and banking. So reflecting on it now, 7 years later, this initial idea of Monerium, it must have sounded, not a bit crazy, but, really crazy, to be honest. And to think about it, then it's really a marvel that we managed initially to attract investors willing to bet on us. And even more, to gain the trust of regulators many, many years ago. We got the license in 2019. The European Parliament confirmed our approach only this year. And it has also been remarkable how we managed to motivate the team over the 7 very, very, very volatile years, with frequent booms and busts in crypto land. So, yeah. So what have I learned from this venture? I guess the biggest lesson is that, the importance of working on a meaningful project. The true reward for me is if we reshape the global financial landscape, if we manage to empower individuals and challenge society's dependence on traditional banking, that would be fantastic. And since Monerium is such a meaningful project, I remain relatively calm during our ups and downs over the years, during our roller coaster ride.
Of course.
So yeah, this has been a really interesting journey, but a lot of fun.
Good. I mean, it sounds like you're extremely passionate about what you do, and I think that's the main thing. I mean, I think it's a privilege to enjoy your job, right? So it sounds like you do. So that's good.
Absolutely.
Yes, feeding back into that, if you could go and have a coffee with your 20-year-old self and give yourself some advice of what you've learned up until now, what's the one piece of advice you tell yourself?
The one piece of advice, I guess, just to understand that the startup business can be tough. Setbacks are likely to occur, if not inevitable. So pursue what is really important, what truly matters, since that diminishes the impact of setbacks. It makes them more manageable. It makes it basically easier to keep calm and carry on, when you have the setbacks that you probably will. So that is probably the one advice I would give my 20-year self.
Love that. Well, it's been great having you on. Great hearing a little bit of an insight into your industry and sharing some of your success about how you've come this far. I really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks, Jon. Thank
you very much. Thanks.
And for all our listeners, thank you for listening once again, and tune in next time for Growing Tech Fast.